5 September and it's plus minus, I'll say 1 o'clock. But I've decided to come and take Jack for a stroll here in the park. If you go over this bridge, you will go towards our home. And here's the river, and it's actually quite nice walking over here with your dog. And yeah, I've decided to share something with you today. And I just want to first show you how Jack looks like. And yeah, he loves his daily strolls. There he's after a butterfly. And but yeah, the thing that I've got on my mind today is that if you read there in Genesis 3:15, you will see that it was promised that Jesus will come out of a human being. He will be born out of a woman, and then he will redeem mankind. There was so much said in that promise. First of all, if you think about it, it was basically said that a perfect person will be born out of a woman, and then it was also prophesied that he will then crush like the head, the skull of the enemy. And it's very significant if you read there in Calvary. Calvary is the place of the skull, but that's basically where Jesus demolished Satan's skull. So there was a lot said in that promise. And then when people started to read about this promise, they asked themselves, okay, if it is true that this will happen, that the Redeemer will come, where will he be born? And it was basically said there in, if you read in Micah 5 verse 2, it was prophesied. Micah looked at Bethlehem and he prophesied and he said, you know what, this place, even though it's a small place, sorry that I'm standing still every now and then, but Jack is so interested in this area because usually we walk a little bit further away from the river. But okay, so Micah prophesied that the Redeemer will come out of Bethlehem. And Bethlehem means house of bread or house of meat. And it's not making a big difference because Jesus was the bread of heaven. And he said that his food, his meat, is to do the will of his Father. So it was prophesied that the person that will do the perfect will of God the Father will come from Bethlehem. So just remember that. And if you ask yourself then, okay, because now we know according to Genesis, the first promise, there will be a Redeemer, and he will be born out of a woman. He will be a perfect person because he will demolish the skull of Satan, and in the process he will be wounded himself. But then yeah, they also knew, okay, it will be in Bethlehem. This is where it will all happen. And then the next question that you'll have to ask yourself is, how? How will it happen? And it was prophesied in Isaiah 7 verse 14 that Jesus will be born out of a virgin. He will be God with us. He will be Emmanuel. It was said there in Isaiah 7 verse 14, he will be Emmanuel, God with man. In other words, as soon as this birth will take place, guess what will happen next? After this birth, God will be in human form with man. So this was all prophesied. And then Jeremiah 31 verse 15 prophesied that there will be an enormous persecution of Rachel's children. And yeah, it happened exactly that like it was prophesied. It was said that the women will cry, and to such a degree there won't be any comfort for them. And this happened in the time of King Herod, when the babies were killed, when the time that Jesus was born, and because it was also prophesied that God will call his son out of Egypt. And it didn't make sense to the prophets at those stage, at the people, because how can he be born in Bethlehem and then he will be called out of Egypt? But then Joseph and Mary had to flee with Jesus all the way to Egypt, and God called them out of Egypt as soon as it was safe. So everything was prophesied. And then that was Hosea 11 verse 1, where God said he will call his son out of Egypt. And then if you read in Isaiah 11 verse 1, so it's easy to remember, Hosea 11 verse 1. Now Isaiah 11 verse 1, there shall come forth a shoot, a branch out of the stock of Jesse. It was prophesied that there will be a stock or a branch. Somebody will come out of the progeny of Jesse, and he will be our Redeemer. In other words, the father of David, Jesus will be born out of that same lineage, and he will, like I said, that the prophecy said he will be a shoot, a young branch, and Jesus lived in Nazareth, and Nazareth means branch. So every time that people talked about Jesus, the Nazarene, they actually said Jesus the branch. So it happened exactly like it was prophesied. And then it was also prophesied that he will be a descendant of Abram, and he will also be a descendant of Isaac. And remember, Abram had 8 sons, so it was Ishmael and Isaac, and then it was like also the 6 sons that he had with Keturah after Sarai died. But it was specifically prophesied that he will be born out of Isaac's lineage. So everything still according to prophecy. And then it was prophesied that he will be a descendant of Jacob. And you can read about this in Genesis 12 verse 3, 17 verse 19, 21 verse 12, 22 verse 18, and Numbers 24 verse 17. It was also prophesied that he will be from the tribe of Judah in Genesis 49 verse 10. In other words, of all 12 sons, there was no coincidence. It was prophesied, you know what, there's one where he will specifically come from, and that will be the tribe of Judah. Just look at this tree. How amazing. It's a redwood tree. Okay, but it's gigantic, to be honest with you. I can't even, I'm standing too near to it so that you can't see the top of it. But okay. And so everything, it's absolutely impossible that somebody could have prophesied something like that out of their own. And then it was specifically said that he will inherit David's throne. In 2 Samuel 7 verse 12 and 13, Isaiah 9 verse 7, Psalms, I think it's Psalm 25 verse 4 and 7. But it was said that he will not be a normal king. He will be like an eternal king. He will be an eternal king, so his throne would be forever. Everything was prophesied. And even Daniel 2 verse 44 is saying that. And then if you read there in Psalm 35 verse 1, you will see that it was prophesied that it was prophesied that Jesus will be falsely accused. And it happened just like that. He was falsely accused. He would be betrayed. Zechariah 11 verse 12 and 13 and Psalms 41 verse 8 said that he will be, that people would betray him. And then it was also prophesied that they will spat on him. And it happened exactly like that. It was prophesied that he will be hated without cause. Psalm 35 verse 19. Okay, here's the park, Ramanga Valley Park. It was also prophesied that he will be crucified with criminals. Isaiah 53 verse 12. Everything happened exactly like that. It was prophesied that he will be sacrificed for our sins. Isaiah 53 verse 5 to 12. Psalm 22 verse 16. Zechariah 12 verse 10. Psalms 22, you can even read that his torture will be of such a nature that all the bones in his body you will be able to see them. Everything will be exposed. And then it was also prophesied that he will be mocked and ridiculed. Psalm 22 verse 18. Psalm 69 verse 21. That he will be given vinegar to drink. Psalm 34 verse 20. No, none of his bones will be broken. His bones will not be broken. Psalm 109 verse 4. He would pray for his enemies. It was prophesied that he would pray for his enemies. Everything happened like that. And then in Isaiah 53 verse 9, it was prophesied that he would be buried with the rich. And his resurrection was prophesied in detail in Psalms 16 verse 10, Psalms 49 verse 15. It was even prophesied that he would ascend to heaven. So that was Psalm 24 verse 7 to 10. And then there was even an exact timeline in Daniel. Now the book Daniel was written 500 years before Jesus died. So absolutely no coincidence. At one stage when the people said, no, this is too good to be true, it can't be this accurate, they said no, the book Daniel was written way later. But then they found those Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Dead Sea Scrolls was, unfortunately, those copies were only 125 years before Christ, but still 125 years before Christ. Everything they could see that it was, the book Daniel was absolutely authentic, and everything happened exactly according to prophecy. And it was even prophesied that he would bring with his death an end to the sacrifices in Daniel 9 verse 27. It's got nothing to do with the Antichrist. It's got everything to do with Christ that would enter the sacrifices. There's no place in the Bible talking about a 7-year peace treaty that will be broken in half of the 7 years. That's all a bunch of nonsense that Clarence Larkin and the Freemasons thumbsucked, and the church swallowed it, hook, sinker and line, everything. But nevertheless, Jesus, while he was walking here, we know just before he was crucified, he entered Jerusalem on a donkey. It was prophesied, because it was prophesied that he will be humble and that he will ride on this donkey into Jerusalem when he was supposed to receive his kingdom. And it happened exactly like that. That's how his kingdom was established. Yeah, when Jesus was walking this earth, he was talking about the sign of Jonah. So the whole time he told his disciples, even when Peter took him aside and said, no, we will not allow it that you will be crucified. And he said to them, that's the reason why I came. And he said, but you know what, it's the sign of Jonah. You will see the sign of Jonah. Because Jonah, he was dead. He was in that fish, in that stomach of the fish, and he died. Nobody can live there. But Jesus said, just like that, I will also die. But 3 days later, I will stand up again. You will see me again. And then it's recorded in the Bible that if you go read there in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 3 to 8, it's recorded all the people that Jesus, or some of them, a list of them. Paul is giving a whole list of people who saw Jesus after his death. And then he was talking about 500 people, more than 500 people, and saying to the people, you can't argue about this because these people are still alive. Go ask them, And they had no argument because everybody knew, okay, there's 500 people, more than 500 people are still alive. So there's absolutely no coincidence whatsoever in the Bible. And